Hello. Hello. Happy Friday. Welcome, everyone. This is So You're Thinking About Being a Chief of Staff with Leigh Felton, and I'm Leigh Felton. This is where we talk about everything related to the Chief of Staff role, and we just dive into the details for those who are interested in becoming a Chief of Staff or even understanding what the role is for those that are doing the role, may or may not have the title, and just trying to get some tips and tricks and pointers and share experiences, or even for those who are hiring for the chief of staff position. This is a great opportunity for us to come together, have those conversations, see, not just from my perspective of the chief of staff role and how it functions, but also understand your questions. It's like, what is going on in the industry? What are you thinking about? And that helps me. Actually, that helps me stay, up to date and curious about some of the things that people are discussing when it comes to this function. So, we actually, and this is just how I function. We actually had a completely different show scheduled for today because I had a guest that was joining me, but unfortunately, it doesn't appear that she's going to be able to join. So we're changing it up, and welcome to the life of a chief of staff, because it's not going to always go as planned. It will. So I was about to say it never will go as planned. It sometimes will go as planned, go smoothly, but there are so many situations where it's just not what you think, like literally right before you're going on stage or you're pushing someone on stage, or you're about to do something, you think that you have everything lined up, and guess what, it's not, and you have to recover. That is part of the role as well. So this is just natural now to who I am. It's like, okay, well, can't make it, we'll do something else. And so what I thought we would do today, because we haven't had a chance, we've had such amazing conversations these last few sessions, we really haven't had an opportunity to deep dive into your questions. And so I thought, for those who are out there, that this might be a great opportunity for us to have a conversation, to say, okay, what are you thinking? Why are you here? What can we help you with? I know, even though we've been running this, how long have we been doing the series? Almost a year, I think. And we initially started out with, what is a chief of staff? And I still get asked that question a lot, for people who are interested in actually explaining the chief of staff role. So I don't know if those of you who are watching today would like to deep dive into the role itself, or if there's other questions you have, but let's have a conversation. Let's engage in dialogue. And if you've tuned in before, you know that I sincerely appreciate communication and engagement. That, I can ramble and talk, but I like to know that there are people, human people, on the other side of this screen, because I'm a human person. And at the end of the day, everybody that you're working with, even in this virtual world, virtual or hybrid world that we've moved to, we're still human, individual people, and it's important for us to recognize that. So I love having conversations with people. So okay, so LinkedIn user is asking if we could do a quick overview of the chief of staff role, what it is, what it focuses on. Would love to do that. But first, how about a hello? If you've tuned in before, I love to say hi to people, and I love to see who you are, where you're calling from, why you've tuned in. And so let's just take a moment and say hello. So who are you? Where are you? Let me know, why are you here? What made you take this time out of your schedule and say, I'm going to go tune in and listen to what Leigh has to say. So we have LinkedIn user, and it says LinkedIn user for some reason on my screen, but at the end of the session, when it goes on LinkedIn, I'll actually be able to see the names of people who are saying hi. So hello and good morning from Seattle. Who else is out there? So hello to you. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as you are doing that, saying hi to me, hopefully, let's go to the original question, and I'll do a brief overview. Oh, hello, Jesper from Seattle too. I will do a brief overview of the chief of staff role as you are all kind of, finding your keyboards to say hi and tell me where you're calling from and why you're here. So the chief of staff role, here is the description, right? Here is here's the JD. Doesn't quite work like that. And unlike a lot of positions where you can say, you know what, it's a very structured, boom, boom, boom. This is your core responsibilities. This is your the qualifications that are needed. The chief of staff role is so very, very different based on the executive that's hiring the role, based on the industry in the organization that the company would, that the chief of staff would be working for, and based on the skills, background, and expertise of the chief of staff. And so when I talk about a chief of staff on this series, I am talking about an executive level chief of staff. And so I'm talking about a peer to the senior leadership team, a peer that runs a line of business. And that line of business may not be the traditional line of business that your CFO, your CMO, your CLO, that they run, but the line of business is actually running and supporting and operating the organization to ensure the executive is successful, to ensure the entire organization that they're in line and they understand the direction and where you're going, and to ensure the overall cohesion and functionality of your leadership team. And so to me, that is a critical line of business. Hi, Sheila from Dallas. Hi, Sheila from Dallas. So it's a critical function, and it can mean a lot of different things. When I speak about, there are some commonalities. Now, of course, it's not like, oh, the chief of staff is going to, I don't know, actually the chief of staff may own the P&L. I mean, seriously. So there are many different approaches to the chief of staff. I talk in very general terms because there are some commonalities that you should expect in a chief of staff role, in an executive chief of staff role. So we're not talking, so there are different approaches to the chief of staff. And, I tell people all the time, if you see a role that says chief of staff / executive assistant, or if you see a job description that says chief of staff who is really good at managing complex calendars and travel, that's not a chief of staff role. And I highly respect the executive assistant function. And I think that the titles and the levels should be really, complementary to the executive functioning that these individuals bring to the table, but they're completely two different roles. So for instance, I would never hire me as an executive assistant. Managing account, I would never hire me as an executive assistant. It's not a skill set that I have. But as you think about the executive chief of staff, the things that are very common in this position is I divide it into 3 core areas. You have the executive office, you have the overall business orchestration, and then you have the leadership team. And so as you think about those 3 particular areas of functioning, what is your role and where do you show up? So to me, the chief of staff runs the executive office. So when you're talking about your CEO and you're talking about, okay, how are we organizing things? How are we making things run? The chief of staff runs the executive office. And so that does mean you have to be in lockstep with your CEO, but you need to run the executive office. The CEO should not be, that's not the best use of that person's time, and that's why they have an executive level chief of staff. When it comes to the organization, that is more about, okay, all of the things that are coming for the business. So if you think about the way a business runs, all of things that are coming from the business, from the leaders, from the board sits in the executive office structure. You think about all of those things that are occurring. How do you make sure that the organization, that each individual across the organization, they understand the role that they play contributes to the bigger picture, that they can see the things that I'm doing and delivering, this is how it adds to our mission, to our vision, to our strategy. This is how it adds, that everybody feels and understands for their function, for their team, for their, group, they understand how they're contributing. And then there's the leadership team. And it's an interesting dynamic because you are a member of the leadership team, but one of your core functions is also in support and facilitating, leading the leadership team. And it's about that cohesiveness. It's not just about, oh, let's show up. What is our agenda? What do we need to talk about? But it's about, hey, I know what's going on in that organization. I know what's going on in that organization. And you are helping to tie connectors together. You are helping to keep the conversation going. You are helping to ensure a healthy relationship, not just productive conversations across all of your meetings and offsites. But yes, that's a given, right? But if we think about the unspoken, an executive level chief of staff really needs to be able to look across the entire leadership team and say, okay, how are we weaving all of this together, and how are we making sure that we have a healthy dynamic? If you saw the last session, you see why I'm smiling at the word dynamic, but a healthy, engaging leadership team. So in very general terms, when I talk about the executive level chief of staff, I don't, if you want to get into like the day to day of how a chief of staff functions, I have to do this because I keep it here. So why would I not do it? I did write the book, Unlocking Your Inner Chief of Staff. And the purpose of this book is, I call it a fun book because I truly tried to make it fun because the chief of staff role is so serious, and I'm known to be very serious when I'm functioning in that role, that I actually tried to make it an executive coloring book. It works for some, it doesn't work for others. But the whole point is, if you want to look at specific details, like, your problem solving skills, your analytical skills, if you want to look at the specific, at that level, I would suggest the book. Or not. I mean, you can even do searches on job descriptions in the very general, problem solving. You need to be able to, there's all kinds of problems that you need to be able to solve. But then if you think about it's always special projects, right? This goes to the business that the industry that your organization is in. And it also goes to your specific skill set. So my skill set, and, I always say that we each have our own area of genius. My area of genius is around content synthesization. It's around being able to dissect and, just take on lots of content, lots of information, and being able to parse that out to different audiences for what they need. So, I have a business communications background. And so anything that comes to executive communications, strategy, delivery, engagement. So most of the executive chief of staff roles that I take are very much focused on, bringing in that extra element. And so there are some, and I also have normally run the OpEx budgets, and I I have actually come across a few chief of staff roles that don't own the OpEx budget, which is interesting to me. And we can have a conversation about that at some time of why I think it's important for the chief of staff to own the OpEx budget. But yeah, there's all types of things that you can bring in. And let's say your background is legal. Let's say, and you're in an industry where your executive really needs that area of expertise. And so there's things that you will be able to specifically drill in on based on what you bring to the table. This role is not one size fit all by any stretch of the imagination. There are commonalities in the skills, in the meaning that if you're not flexible, if you are not adaptable, if you have ego, it's going to be difficult for you. If you want a schedule where you have a to-do list, you have a program, and you get in your office, home office or other, and you want to get through that list and check things off and get it done, and then, deal with people on your time, you're going to have a very difficult time in this position. Most of the time, I write a to-do list every day, and I might get through, 20, 30% of that to-do list, because part of my role, people in my organization, my leadership team, my executive, I don't consider them a distraction. So how people, oh, I'm trying to get things done, but people keep bugging me and wanting me to do this or wanting me to do that. I don't consider those things a distraction. I consider that a key part of my job. So if you can't work in that type of environment, it might be a challenge. So, okay, what other questions do we have? We have LinkedIn user that says the overview was helpful. Thank you. You're building bridges in a way. Oh, back to the yes. You're building bridges, but you're helping other people who are building the bridges to reimagine what a bridge can be, where a bridge needs to go. The chief of staff role, I mean, I and one of the reasons that I do this series, that I wrote the book, it is such an amazing position that, because of the confusion about the position in the market, and you'll see, I mean, look, do a search on chief of staff jobs and you'll see things that I just look and it's like, this is not a chief of staff job. It's like, if you just want somebody that you have a bunch of projects and you want to throw some projects at them, then fine, call it a project manager, business manager. But it's not a chief of staff. To me, a chief of staff, it's a CXO position, just like a chief, anything else. It's a CXO role. And so if you truly are hiring a chief of staff, be ready to be a partner. And I always talk about the executive that is able and willing to listen versus the ones who are not. So there are many different types of executive partners out there. And at the end of the day, this is what I tell my executive partner. I'm always going to come to you and tell you what I'm seeing, my recommendations, my view, and my perspective. And that will always have data and information to help you understand why I've made that recommendation. But at the end of the day, it is your business. It is your decision to go in one way or another, to take my recommendation or not. The difference is the executive that's willing to listen to the data, to the information that you're bringing to the table, to take that in, and then make the decision it's not relevant right now. And the executive that you feel, I can't even approach to tell them, they don't want to hear it. If you're an executive partner that is looking for a chief of staff to not actually partner with you and tell you difficult things and have you consider things a different way, then maybe instead you want a project manager. But an executive chief of staff should be a trusted, reliable, and respected resource. Respect is a two-way street. Okay. What else do we have? You want me to just keep rambling, or is there something specific any of you would like to dive into? Does a chief of staff typically have direct reports? You know, when people do this and they say yes and no, I'm going to pull one of those on you. Yes and no. Again, it depends on, I mean, if you were working for a nonprofit organization, you know, with 15 people, maybe not, right? So there's a lot of elements that go into whether or not a chief of staff will have direct reports. There's a lot of elements that go into what you consider direct reports. And so does it have to be direct line management? Could it be dotted line management? So when, let's say, when a chief of staff has direct reports, the roles that they will typically have reporting to them, and this is not taken into consideration if you run other businesses. So at this stage in my career, when I take on chief of staff roles, it will be a chief of staff slash something. So like in the last role, chief of staff slash strategy lead, chief of staff slash go to market lead. So for me, I will also have, you know, some other business to go along with it. But if we just take, you know, the chief of staff, so it's not like you're doing these other, you know, special businesses, the roles that a chief of staff would normally have is an EA. And so if you're an executive level chief of staff, and that means you're running an executive level business, and you can, I have the most amazing ex EA partner, and she'll tell you my calendar, because a true chief of staff, I'm vetting. So that means the meetings, you know, before you're landing a meeting, unless it's a known thing, you know, before you're landing a meeting with the executive, we're vetting this. Is this something that actually needs to be on the executive's calendar, or is this something that you and I can talk through and we can make it happen? So an EA, I would say, even if it's a shared EA, an EA is an important role. The very first position that I hire as a chief of staff is a business manager, because to me, a business manager, I mean, you think about the intricacies of all of the programs you run as a chief of staff, and a business manager, there's three main responsibilities that I give to my business manager and work with them on. Number one is the rhythm of the business. And so I structure the strategy around the rhythm. So I look at, you know, all of the flows of how things work. But if you think about the rhythm of the business as a program, it is something that is not just a detailed calendar, but it really is this program of how you're running your business and, you know, setting expectations. You need somebody that is going in and doing the tactical intricacies of actually putting it together, you know, making sure the right pieces are in the right places. If something moves, you know, and so you need that element as well. So I will typically have a business manager, number one, to help actually execute on the rhythm of the business, to actually execute on the OpEx budget. And so, you know, there's a lot of systems and tools in the organizations that I've worked for. And so someone that can go in and, you know, deal with the tools and put in the numbers and deal with those kind of things. And then depending on the size of the organization, you know, the business manager, you know, will handle other things as well. It could you know, that person could handle, you know, draft comms, you know, some events. And so it just depends on that role. The other things that I've had in the chief of staff role, I've had comms directors reporting to me in the chief of staff position. So EA, business manager, communications director. And I'm not talking about special programs. I'm just talking about running the chief of staff office. Are there other, I might have an engagement manager. So depending on the executive travel schedule, so if they do a lot of field visits, a lot of customer visits, a lot of partner visits, and there's a significant amount of time, spent on those engagements, I might have an engagement manager that will help take care of those specific logistics. So let's say EA, business manager, comms director, engagement manager. Hmm, I'm just trying to think right on this spot. Um, those are pretty those are pretty much the core areas where I would have staff just for the chief of staff office. Just for the chief of staff office. So, okay, any other questions? Any other questions out there? We only have a few minutes left, and I feel like I've been talking a lot and hopefully even answering questions that haven't been directly asked. Okay, no questions? Okay, so I will then let's talk about the relationship of the chief of staff to the organization. Because a lot of times people don't think about that. A lot of times people think about, oh, the chief of staff, it is specifically for the executive, or it is specifically to help keep the leadership team organized. A lot of times, and this is an oversight for many people, is the relationship of the chief of staff to the rest of the organization. And there has to be that open door. I mean, has to be is strong. Again, this is all relative to you, to your executive, to your company. But if you're asking me, and I'm giving my perspective and the type of person I am, I believe that there should be an open door, and it's just like what we were talking about at the beginning of this session. We're people. Yes, you might have the CEO title, or I might have the chief of staff title. You might have the project management, program management title, whatever. We're all people. Regardless of your title, we're all people. And if people need help and they need to be able to move things through, then it's important that they have a place to go. And so, yes, their manager should always, be the first place to go. But I always think that the chief of staff should absolutely have a relationship with the organization. That I've worked with leadership teams, and I have participated not just in the all hands for the organization, but I've participated, especially if there's significant business changes that are coming, or to even help teams understand the rhythm of the business or the communications, or if there's certain policies that we've put in place. I have gone to individual LT members all hands as well. And so I do think it's important that there is that relationship, that it's not just you are only at this level where you can see the top level of business, but you have to be able to understand what's going on in other areas as well. Okay, I am not afraid to end the session early if we don't have questions. I always go over anyway, and so maybe everyone appreciates 2 minutes back, but instead of me just rambling and guessing what you want to hear about, I am happy to answer your questions. I'm happy to let you go a couple of minutes early. And if you have questions, and you either don't want to ask them in this forum, you want to ping me on LinkedIn and ask, and then I'll put it in the chat, because believe it or not, the question that is on your mind, it's on other people's minds as well. And so I do like to use this time to do the peer mentoring circle, so we can have that together. Okay, good. I'm glad this has been helpful. And the thing about being a newbie is that when you are doing a chief of staff role for the first time, for the 50th time, there's things that you bring with you, but there are so many elements that are going to be new, because believe me, when you work so closely with the executive office and the personalities, you cannot, there's no replicating that. Really, one executive is not the same as another executive. There's no replicating that. So, we're all new in a way. What's the most important in your first 90 days as the chief of staff? I would say even before that, the most important thing in your first 30 days as a chief of staff is to listen. So you might have all of these ideas. You might be so excited about all of these things that you can bring to the table and all of the things that you heard during the interview. Oh, we're missing this. And you want to just run in and start putting those things in place. The first, I have had a situation where an organization was so messed up that I needed to immediately do things, within that first 30 days. But other than a situation like that, people need to feel like you're doing things with them, not to them. So to me, the first 2 weeks is 100% about listening. It's about a listening tour, not just listening to your LT, to your executive. It's about going in to the organization, listening to teams, listening to roles, listening to, your partners, other partner organizations that you're gonna work with. So before you start formulating what your plan is and how things should work, and this is what we need to do, listen. And so that would be my advice to you. We are out of time. Again, if you have any questions, this is the place for you to ask them. I highly invite you to engage in the conversations. We're here every other week. And so I will see you in a couple of weeks. Thank you so much for joining. Take care and see you next time. Bye.